everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. And I hope that you all are having a wonderful night and that the world is just loving you like it absolutely should, and that the universe is just throwing great things in your direction. And I hope that it's all doing that because this doesn't happen to everybody. But that's me just being a bit of a grouse, because, things are things. But anyway, welcome everybody. KP, sorry that you had such a weird instance with the hotel. Also, didn't know you were traveling, but that doesn't make me very surprised, because you travel a lot, and I never really know where you are sometimes. Sounds like a complicated trip. One does not simply walk into Mordor. But the room sounds like it might have been as hot as Mordor. What is up, Vipers? How's it going? How are you? Hope you're doing well. Not really having a wonderful night, but it's gotten to the point of acceptable. Yeah, sometimes acceptable is better than unacceptable, and we have to look at it that way. Right? We're not in 2020 anymore. This is a perspective moment, right? It's no longer 2020, and we're not in the middle of pandemic lockdown. So things could be worse, right? But welcome to Adventures in History, and this is my stream where we talk about historical stuff. And tonight we are doing a viewer request stream. This was one that was voted on by you all, the viewers, and the specific request was Roman aqueducts, which I'll be real honest, seemed like a really difficult thing for me to talk about. And I will be honest again and say that I had to rely a lot on outside assistance because I didn't really know what to talk about. So luckily I asked the mod chat and said, hey, if I were going to do a stream on, Roman aqueducts, what should I talk about? And as usual, they provided me with a big old list of questions that I could answer. So we've got content for the night. Which is something that I really didn't know if I was going to be able to make up. But we've got a good stream, and it's got some interesting stuff going on. So the world is doing okay. Greetings, Tad. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Thank you again, and you know why. So ready to see some aqueducts. Green Herring is pumped. Welcome, Green Herring. Hope the world is doing a good job taking care of you. So, as a reminder, tonight is one of 3 streams where I am, apparently not logged into Twitch. Okie dokie. Nope, let me, apparently OBS has logged me out of Twitch, so I can't use my chat commands in Twitch. So I'm having to log into Twitch, which means it's probably going to make me... That password was incorrect. Super. Pro streamer. Hey, there we go. After a bajillion attempts, I finally get my password, which I made correct. Let me now put in my verification key so that we can get this thing rolling. 9... Hey, there we go. Ba-dum-bum. I will absolutely give the credit to the list of questions in Mac and Lab Code. Well, you helped, so question, no, Shane, no. A, pain, gain, train, vein, no. I wonder who the first person to say pro streamer when something went wrong with the stream. I don't know. But we are in the midst of a charity drive, and the link that is just popped up there in chat is to my specific one. I am collecting in a larger charity drive called the 12 Days of Streaming with a whole bunch of really awesome streamers, collecting for Starlight Children Foundation, which is a group of people who try to make kids' lives in the hospital a little bit easier by doing things like providing them entertainment in the form of books, coloring books, workbooks, interactive learning tools, video games, and even basic stuff like, hospital gowns that don't look like they came out of a one-size-fits-all locker, that are decorated with things like Spider-Man or all kinds of cool stuff. So they're a really good charity, and I wouldn't put out the shingle for them if I didn't believe in them. We are almost at our goal. We are 72.5% of the way there, thanks to very generous viewers like you all. And I have a little bit of a sweetener. Now, the drive is going to continue through Thursday this week, but as a special bonus / incentive, in my last trip to Turkey, I was able to coordinate with a gentleman named Tirad Ganiknu, and I have some pretty cool flyover footage from drones that follow the pathways of 2 of the aqueducts that we're going to talk about tonight. And if we get all of our stream goal filled up tonight, that means Thursday is basically just icing on the cake. But if we hit all of that stuff, I'm going to be playing some drone footage for you tonight. And to give you, I guess, a little bit of an incentive, perhaps I can maybe show you a couple of frames if I were so inclined. Well, you can't see that because I'm not playing it. But if I were to say, do something like this and showed you that we've got really cool drone footage of aqueduct flyover, maybe that would be a bit of incentive. Maybe. But you don't have to, It's up to you all. I have Danish aqueducts. They are from where my tears flow. That's good. That's good. What's up, Black Apple Creative? Hey, how's it going? Black Apple Creative is actually the streamer who is in charge of putting together all of this gigantic stream team that I am part of, putting together all of these. Like there are dozens of streamers involved in Black Apple Creative's stream team, and has done an amazing amount of organization involving people like me who are not organized and don't do things when we're asked to immediately, have to be asked like 25 times. It's a great thing. It's a great thing that you're doing there, Black Apple. It's good to see you. Good to see you. Lumpy Dragon Potato, how's it going? David is here. David sings as a bonus. Or build someone else's model. DJ Jane, oh yeah, DJ Jane is involved. It is gorgeous footage, and I have that one, and I have another one. So we've got about 10 minutes of good drone flyover footage. Oh, I should offer to sing. I'm not bad at singing. I could. Let's stick with the drone footage first. Let's just stick with the drone footage, and we'll see how that goes. That's why it would be a bonus. I see. I was not prepared to stream and sing at the same time. I should probably have a different microphone and a different audio setup if I were going to do that. But you are very, very welcome, Black Apple Creative. Thank you for putting all the work in and getting all of us organized. And you do a lot of good stuff for this, and I appreciate the work that you put in. We're almost all the way there. Almost all the way there. So again, I'll put that here. We can also do some shout-out stuff. We've got David Peterson in the room. David Peterson is a good friend and author and illustrator of a comic series called Mouse Guard, which is about medieval mice standing up to a world where everything's bigger than them except for their hearts. They've just got a lot of heart. And it's a great series, and I love it to death. We've also got Lumpy Dragon Potato in the room, who is Minecraft builder extraordinaire, who can build worlds with square things that just somehow look like they're lived in. And it's great. I never thought Minecraft was an artistic tool until I started watching Lumpy Dragon Potato. So go follow these great people. Let's see. Where are we at? Do they call footage metrage in French Canada? Over here they call it inchange. Oh, inchange. Okay. We reached the 20,000 Starlight goal. That's amazing. That is amazing. $20,000 for the stream team that we're a part of. And we're not even done with the drive yet. I've still got this stream and another stream. I know that a lot of other streamers have other stuff going on. That is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. It is a meditative tool for my stressed potato butt. I understand that. That's one of the reasons why I build models on Sundays, right? It's just kind of like a whoo. All right, so let's talk about some aqueducts. First off, what's the purpose of an aqueduct? Well, really clearly, it's to move water, right? But why do we need water? And why is this such a big deal? Part of this starts because the city of Rome itself was not really situated in an area that had a lot of fresh water. When the city of Rome was first built, it was built on several hills, and in between the hills was a giant friggin' swamp that was really nasty and caused a whole bunch of issue, and every time it rained it got really muddy, which is why they lived on the hills, right? They didn't drain that until a long time after they had founded the city there. Water is vital, it really is. But the point here is they were a city. If we take the Roman time period, or the Roman timeline accurately, they were a city in 753 BC, and it took them all the way until 312 BC to actually build their first aqueduct. So what's the deal here? Why did it take them, 430 years to figure out we need more water? Well, the biggest issue here is population growth. And populations, as they expand, just need more water. It's a clear thing here. And Romans were pretty smart in that they showed a fairly basic understanding of things like fresh water is better to drink than stagnant water. And having clean water, even if it comes from another area, is better than drinking just like saturated groundwater. So they started thinking about what to do and how to handle this stuff. And another thing, the Romans really loved to use water in their cities. So it's not just like we need fresh water to drink. They also wanted to do other stuff. And I'm going to be wearing the adventure hat for a great deal of this particular stream. So if you are new to the channel, this is the adventure hat. And when I wear the adventure hat, we throw the adventure hat emotes into the chat like so. And I wear this when I show you stuff that I've seen with my own eyeballs. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be showing you all tonight that I've seen with my own eyeballs. The vast majority of photos tonight are going to be ones that I took. So what you're saying is that Italy is the boot of a giant still suit. The pumps are in the boot, in the heel part. X times infinity, indeed. All right, so what are they using all of this water for? Things like this. So this is what's called a nymphaeum, a place where the nymphs hang out. And this was actually a really big water fountain, pretty much. So each one of these little nooks would have originally housed statues. By the way, these nooks are about my height, so they're about a little bit more than 2 meters, about 6 months. Do they still hang out there? No, the nymphs are pretty much long gone because we stopped believing in them. And everybody knows that when somebody says, I don't believe in a nymph somewhere dies unless we clap our hands really loud. Or maybe splash in the bathtub. Anyway, so what we can see though is that each one of these had a little bit of a hole behind it because this would have been full of water. And out from under every single one of these statues would have been a little waterfall that collected here in a pool. It's really hard to see this one because it sits on the the curb of the main road in the city of modern day city of Jerash, ancient city of Gerasa. This is in the country of Jordan. So they had these big things here that were nymphaeum because, you know, it's pretty, right? It's just pretty. Very pretty to have these statues and this water and these pools, and especially in Jordan where water was a really big sign of affluence. Because, I mean, if we look at Jordan, where's my button? Nope, here we go. Let's actually go. Let's just zoom in. And we'll look at Gerasa here. Each time I interact with a streamer life partner, I revert to a polite teenager mindset, no clue why. This is inspiring. I could build a big wall fountain in Fanreal. Absolutely. So here is the ancient city. Well, no, that's not right. Where is the ancient part of it? North. There we go. Oh yeah, this is the ancient part. Maybe I should do it this way. And if I can get my... Yeah, I didn't think it was there. Yeah, there we go. There it is. Okay. So here's the city. Is there a chance that they've street viewed this? Holy smokes, they have street viewed this. So we're going to go look at this in person. Where was that? There's the big hippodrome where they would have done horse races and such. There's the theater, there's the big temple. I thought the Nymphaeum was right across from the temple, but I might... Oh, the big temple. Yeah, okay. So let us go right about here. Nope, we gotta go way down here. I should have planned this out ahead of time. I did not know that they had Google Street View on this whole thing. Where's the big temple to... Is that it? Nope. There are steps. Ah, here we go. Here we go. The Polypopolon's right there. Are they not going to let us go down this way? Oh, no! Well, I guess we can't see it. This piece right here, can we get there? No, of course we can't get there. Can we see it from here? Nope, this is the theater. I've sat right about there before. Anyway, I guess we can't actually see the Nymphaeum because this is it right here. It's on the other side of this theater, on the other side of the Polypropylon. But anyway, Jerash, pretty cool ancient city. You can see that there's not a whole bunch of water around here. There's one little river that we can move from, but this is bringing water from these little headwaters up here that are in this mountain range all the way down here. Way to have an excusable way to pad the runtime tonight. I mean, I didn't know that was really there. I really seriously didn't. I should have done more research. I was much more interested in trying to dig out pictures that I could show that were easily accessible. Okay, so fountains. These big Nymphaeum. Cool stuff. Let me catch up with chat. You here for the Aqueducts? I don't know if we're going to have ducks. But also, hey Shmonite. I feel as though I should be wearing an adventure hat for the stream. Yeah, what's up, Fogage? How's it good? How's it good? How's it going? Good gracious. Do you think free digital maps is the biggest technological innovation in a minute? I love this. This, by the way, the program that I used on here is called Google Earth, and anybody can download it for free. It basically takes Google Street View and it maps it together for the entire planet. I love this. I use this all the time when I teach. It's a friggin' amazing tool, and it's free. I can say tons of good things about this. I've used this for years as a teacher. I can make a map of whatever I want to. Like if I want to make a map of Italy, boom, there's a map of Italy right there. Right. Anyway, so they have these things called nymphaeums, but they also have these things. This is a Roman bath. And the reason I picked this one in particular is because we get to see several interesting parts of the bath. In a Roman bath, there were different rooms. There were regular pools called tepidaria, which is where, the water is tepid. There were caldaria, where water was hot, and there's frigidaria, where water was cold. And what we can see right here is this was the bottom part of the caldaria. And over here, this would have been basically a big old room where a fire was burning. You just asked the right question. So they would have had a big fire burning in this room, and there were pipes that went under the walkway to filter the water here into the bottom of this larger bath. So really cool stuff. Now, sometimes you might even see these covered over and there are actually fires under there, but that's really, really hard to do because of the air circulation. So these were hot water over here, piped under and heated. The region of the frigidarium is over here, but it's really overgrown. But anyway, baths. Romans are huge on baths because this was a social event, right? Scaldarium, yeah, exactly. This was a social place. You would go hang out with people. By the way, that particular bath is at a place in Turkey called Izanoy that I've been to, which is why I'm still wearing the adventure hat. So this was a social event. You go hang out with your friends at the bath. People, in the ancient world were much less hung up about nudity than we are in the United States. So seeing your best friend buck naked in the bath wasn't that big of a deal. And there were even things like business, ventures done in the bath. You bring your business partners to the bath, you go hang out and you have a good sweat and you get in the cold water to cool off and you talk business and arrange a marriage between your kids and stuff like this. This was an important social feature, and to run things like these baths, you got to have a lot of water, right? Because these were big pools that would have probably been, depending on the size of the baths, meters long and wide, and you would have put maybe 50 to 100 people in some of these things. They were pretty big, so you got to have a lot of water for that. Also, and I know you all are probably going to laugh at me, but I get really excited about this stuff. Toilets. Holy crap, ancient toilets. This is a private residence in the city of Philippi that had not one, but two private toilets. And I didn't pull all of the pictures because you can't see the other one very well. I wasn't supposed to go in there. Holy crap. Punned? Yeah, no, not actually pun intended, just pun. But what we can see here is a toilet with a water trough. Yeah, this was a very fancy house, Green Herring. It had a private toilet. Now, so this is inside a residence. Now, if we go to the other side of Philippi, down the main street, we see this thing, which is the public toilet. And all of these, you can see here, all these little notches, these would have been toilets. And there weren't stall doors. You just kind of went in and did your business. Now, I've explained this before, but the reason that there's a notch in the front is for the purposes of cleaning. So you sit here and there's a hole, which you can see here, that's kind of cut out of the seat. And then there's a notch that's down here where you sit, do your business, and then you could reach under to clean up after said business. And one of the more common things would be for a guy to be standing right about here that had sponges or bulrushes on a stick, so that when you sat down you had that nice little gap between your legs. You could kind of just go for the cleaning. That would be kept in the bucket with all of the other stuff, and they would have been reused. You would have, if you had to go pee as a man standing up, you could probably go just about anywhere. But you could go and sit. Romans didn't think it was necessarily that goofy for a man to go sit, especially if he were a high-class Roman that needed to go sit and pee. It was perfectly okay for them to do that. A sponge on a stick. So you sit and you clean. you end up with a iron wrought bunghole with such cleaning tools. Well, it's what you got, right? Um, but you got to have a lot of water for all of these things because, it takes a lot of water to filter this stuff out. And the Romans were great about knowing how to move water around. And once water had been dirtied for whatever purpose, they could keep it separate than the good water that was coming in. They're brilliant people. They're really, really smart people. Um, so there's also things that were industrial uses. And I don't have a lot of pictures of those because unfortunately a lot of these were lost to sort of, just lost because they were run out, and a lot of them were made out of wood. But there are these big things called trip hammers. And a trip hammer basically is a kind of a teeter-totter or a seesaw situation where on one end you have a big bucket. And that bucket is positioned under a running water source. And it fills up the bucket this way, and it raises on the other side a hammer. And when it filled up, the water would eventually push down on one side, and then when it tilted a certain way, all the water would run out of the bucket at the bottom, which would release the hammer, and it would hammer that way. And this was actually a way that Romans would split stone or cut timber. So this is a sort of industrial, they're just called trip hammers, so you can Google this stuff if you want to. They also used water a little bit in milling, but this is pretty rare. They also used stuff for mining. There are a couple of mines where there's a pretty clear evidence that this particular mine was rather beneficial and produced a lot, so they diverted some water to it so that they could use it kind of as a sluice, to move away the byproduct of the the rock and the dirt and stuff that they didn't need. And also sometimes they use this for presses to press either wine or grapes or olives for olive oil or wine. So there's a lot of reasons to have a lot of water. And at the height of the Roman world, when the city of Rome was a big city that had more than 1 million people in it and 9 big aqueducts bringing water in, it's estimated that the average Roman citizen would have had access to 200 gallons of water a day if they so desired to use it, which is an absolutely enormous amount of water, right? So there's a lot of stuff that went into this. Sponge on a stick. That sponge on a stick is not very clean. They would have kept it on the clean side of the water flow, so under those 2 bench runs there would have been flowing water, and you would have kept the sponges on the cleanest end so that the water would flow past them, but they had been used before. How clean is it after that? I've never used a sponge on a stick, so I can't comment. I would suspect we do need to remember that most ancient people stank. And were very unclean. We think of the Romans as these very, very clean individuals, and compared to other people in the ancient world, that's true, but they still stink. We need to be real clear about that, right? Were these like hundreds of thousands of these, or did people walk like 15 minutes to a communal bathroom? There were bathrooms all over the ancient world. The big communal ones like that would have been probably maybe 9 or 10 to a city. Philippi had one on each end of the really, really big main road. And it was a fairly large city. Most of the time, people just kind of went... Oh, that's loud. Dun, 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 dun. Wombi! Thank you so much for that follow. And now we're going to get it again. And welcome to the adventure. Please feel free to hang around, communicate on whatever level you're most comfortable with, and sit back, have a good time. We're here to goof around and talk about water. So not thousands, but there would have been a bit of a hike to get to the communal bathroom. Across the city, maybe I would say maybe 10 minutes or so. So you kind of had to go when you felt the urge, and if you had to just go, you had to go. But there would have been an opportunity. What's up, Raveland? Good to see you. Welcome in. It's fascinating for real, though. Their lives must have been decent overall. Comparatively speaking, yes. Comparing a Roman in the city of Rome or one of the other really big cities in the empire, they would have had a pretty decent life compared to other people in the world at that time. Compared to us, we would not like it. Someone needs to invent fried chicken duct so that I can fill up a bucket from it. Yeah, just a refillable bucket. That was already invented by Colonel Harlan Sanders. There we go. 750 liters. That's a lot. That is a lot. They sterilize them with vinegar sometimes. If they had enough of a wine press in the area and had enough surplus vinegar, yes, they did. And also, Junk Collector, good to see you, my friend. Hope you're having a good one. Maddie, what's up? Hello, hello. Which gives context to Jesus getting vinegar soaked sponge in the Bible. That is an interesting one indeed, and they did hold it up to him on a stick. On a stick. So, did they give Jesus a poop sponge on the cross? Maybe so. Maybe so. That makes it kind of worse, doesn't it? I could not waste good vinegar on poo if I could use water instead. So this would have been wine vinegar, which is basically wine that has gone so bad you can't really use it for anything else. So there we go. What's interesting is that in the ancient Roman world, we actually do have primary sources that talk specifically about water and water movement and aqueducts. The biggest one is by this guy named Sextus Julius Frontius. Where are my stream notes? Nope, that's the background. Frontius. Frontius was a Roman public official who had the title Curator Aquarum. So he was basically the city of Rome's water curator. And his job was keep the water flowing. He, as a sort of a handbook for future curatori aquari, wrote down this really great ancient document called On the Waters of Rome, which is amazing because he talked about like all the different aqueducts and where they started and what sort of springs they came from and how far they were, and he did stuff like walked the length of them so that he could give something like it's this many paces long from the headwaters to Rome. So this guy gave us a really fascinating piece of work that we can still go read. Like right now, if you want to, you can Google Frontius on Aqueducts of Rome, and you can go read this whole document. It's a really amazing thing, and he talks about who built them and why they built them and the purposes behind things and all of this stuff. And it's really, really fun. I know that I'm a giant nerd and I get excited about this stuff, but, there we go. Also, we have a pretty famous guy, a guy named Vitruvius. If you've ever seen the picture of Leonardo da Vinci's sketch of the guy who's got his arms out and his legs out and it's in the circle, this is the Vitruvian Man sketch from Leonardo da Vinci. Vitruvius was a Roman architect, and he wrote a big book called On Architecture. And in that, he talks specifically about how to do stuff like how to build arches and how to move water. And he has a pretty big chunk of his On Architecture book that talks specifically about things related to aqueducts and aqua stuff. Let me catch up with chat because people are talking a lot. Strong vinegar is also a mild disinfectant and herbicide. There we go. Would not waste bad vinegar on poo if you could use water instead. There we go. Poop sponge on the cross sounds like a great premise for a 90s concept album. Oh, that actually does sound like something from the 90s. Always wipe this from the frontius to the bacchius. That's great. The aqua must flow indeed. There we go. Lots of laughing. Everyone knows that the first aqueducts was built by Incontinentia buttocks. Oh, man. Simple Ubi, Sub Ubi. Not quite, but close enough, right? Okay, so what about the actual stuff? What about planning and architecture, and how do we actually get any of this stuff built? Well, that's a good question. Um, who supplies the land? This is an interesting discussion here because aqueducts are going to run from a long distance uh, from a source of water into the city, and this is going to take up land. And the Romans were very cognizant of the fact that this is going to take land. And what they tried to do for most situations is use what was called public land. They had this thing in the Roman legal system that was called the ager publicus, which is basically the public field. It's where we get agrarian. Is that not why you are here? Steve Sketches with the big ol' raid. What's up, man? Good to see you. We've got Steve Sketches coming in. If you all do not know my friend Steve Sketches, you've got to go check this guy out. He's an amazing artist. He's doing a lot of work right now on some of his own intellectual property stuff, which is going to be really friggin' amazing when he gets it all up and running. And now we've got the response again. I don't know why we're getting doubly announced, but sure, why not? Go give Steve a follow. He's an amazing artist, cool guy. And thank you so much for that follow. Or that wasn't a follow, that was a double raid notification. For all of you that don't know who I am, hello, my name is Shane, and I teach history at college, and I'm a giant nerd. And what we do here is kind of goof off and talk about history. So we're having a viewer request night tonight. And we're talking specifically about Roman aqueducts, which was a topic that our viewers wanted to look at. So we've talked a little bit about why Romans needed all this water, and we've had a rousing discussion about public toilets and pooping. And now we're sort of talking about how you get the stuff that you need to build an aqueduct in the first place, right? Like, who's gonna supply all of this land? Because it takes a whole bunch. Also, I should note that we are currently on a charity drive for a charity called the Starlight Children's Foundation. Their job and their goal is to make kids who are in the hospital have a little bit of a brighter life. They offer them things like video games and virtual reality and books and educational stuff and coloring things and hospital gowns that don't look like they came out of, Hospital Monthly. So if you are so inclined, click that link right there and be generous in your donation. We are almost at our charity goal. And as a bonus, if we hit our charity goal tonight, if we get up to $200, I have some really, really nice flyover drone footage of 2 different aqueducts in Turkey that I will be playing at full screen resolution. So if that is an enticing possibility for you, it's up to you all. Let me check up, see if we missed anything in the way. Nick Solotl, good to see you. How's it going? You can see Nick Solotl on their stream doing all sorts of cool animation stuff, including things like this delightful emote that Nick's lovingly made for free and gave it to the stream because that's just how cool Nixa is as a person. So go give Nixa a follow and hang out. Yeah, the public farmland. There we go. Muffin laughed at Brittany's joke a lot, as well as, well, there we go, right? You've got to be accurate in the direction of the sponge motion, right? I'm interested in aqueducts. That's cool. Most ducks do tend to be aquatic. I don't know of any that are necessarily non-aquatic, but I'm sure that there are some there. Aqueduct is probably a Pokemon. There's a Psyduck. So Psyduck is a Pokemon that you can catch while fishing, which is sort of odd, but I understand the concept behind it. But it's an interesting duck. It does evolve into Golduck, which is a scary looking water monstery black lagoon kind of thing, which is odd. The new water type duck in Pokemon is Quaxley. I've never heard of Quaxley, but I'm probably 2 generations behind on Pokemon. The last one that I played was Pokemon X. So I don't know what generation that is, but I know that I'm at least 2 main games behind. If it's built like a duct and flows like a duct, it's probably a duct. One of the potential streams for tonight, stream titles, we went with Fluoride. One of the potential stream titles for tonight was Get Your Ducks in a Row, which I thought was a great one, but I like Flow Ride better. Flow Ride, by the way, is supplied by KP, Killed a Preacher. I can't take credit for that one myself. The Pompadour is odd. Okay. 2 generations behind. Okay. According to the internet, there are 11 duck Pokemon. Well, there we go. I know 2 of them. Duct Hunt, that would have been a good one. If at least one of them isn't Aqueduct, I'm going to be mad. It's probably not going to be Aqueduct. But that would be fun if it were. Anyway, okay, so land. You got to have land to build an aqueduct. Who gives this land? Again, most of the time, the Roman government is going to try to use the public land because they know that they are going to have to run into rich people. And there's at least one documented case where a rich guy refused to give his land up for a public aqueduct. And this guy was a dude named Crassus. And if you know anything about the 1st century BC, and you know about the triumvirate with Julius Caesar and Pompey and Crassus, it was that Crassus who said, no, I'm not giving my land up for an aqueduct. I don't care who you are, what kind of stuff you're going to do. You're not running that aqueduct through my land. And refused and managed to actually get out of having that done. There were also rules that had to be taken into account, specifically here dealing with religious sites. The Romans were very, very religious, and they were very, very, very superstitious. So you did not disturb any temples, any land that was dedicated as a holy site, and you definitely did not disturb any what were called necropoli or cities of the dead, where basically, big places where people were buried. You did not disturb these things. So when planning out how to, build your aqueduct, you had to keep all this stuff in mind. So this did take some time, and there was a lot of planning that went into these situations. We do know that there were times, though, where the land used was donated by rich people. Including the first one built, which is called the Appian Aqueduct, or the Appia, which is this one right here. This one's in Rome. It's north of the city. I have not been there myself because I've never been completely let loose in Rome to go look at all the big stuff. And even all the little weird stuff that I would want to go see. But there's a picture. You can see here it's fairly old looking because it's old. It was built in 312 BC. So, it's an old aqueduct. It's 2,300 years old. So give it a bit of a break. It's had a long run of things, right? It's been 3 generations since XY. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm pretty far behind. Your first suggestion was ducks in a row, yeah. Crassus, the least memorable of the triumvirate, basically like the 5th Beatle. They used his money a lot, though. 3 generations, Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and Scarlet and Violet. Wow, yeah. Boundary lines. Well, sure, but that's true, yeah. They even had Termini. They did. Did they make that specific hand movement like this? Yeah, that was essential. Somebody stood in the corner and did this. This is invoking the Roman god Aqueous. Right, you have to do the magic hand motion. Why didn't you let him off his leash? You would have loved to frolic in the history. That's true. But the issue is that I'm very cognizant of the fact that when I go places with other people, that they are not as excited about this stuff as I am. And I want to make sure that they have a fun trip too, right? I don't want to dominate the entire thing. So there we go. Sure, he had money, but he barely even made it into Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Well, Shakespeare wasn't really interested in history that much. He was much more interested in making political comments about his particular thing. You would have had to go with him. Who would he have had to blab about the history if he was alone? Anybody else that was there. I have been known to blab about history to literally random people, and my wife has actually seen me do this. Just start blabbing about history to random people who walk up. I will interpose myself in their conversation and go, "Hey, do you know about this?" And I mean, I like running my mouth about history. There we go. So the Appia was built partially on a big estate. So this estate was land that was donated by one of the patricians, and they got a lot of bonus out of this because here's the thing: if you're donating land to the public good, this makes you look really nice. You get a big old bump in the public support. And especially back in the early Republic, when patricians needed a lot of votes on their side, sucking up to the public was a great way of doing it. And bringing in water when Rome was running out was a big old deal. So 312, we get our first one in, and it's good stuff. I get that. I have to dampen my enthusiasm when near or inside European castles. And then they back away slowly. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, good. While he's distracted, I'll make my escape. You should get him an interested bystander doll that he can carry around with him. I'd talk to it. I probably would. I'd be more surprised if your wife has never saw you talk about history. No. Like, talk to random people at a historical site about the historical site. Like me just, like, we're walking around and then someone else says something and I hear them say that. And I'm like, well, I can answer that for you. Let me, anyway, I'm a weirdo. So here's a question. We've got the land. How about the money? Lots of cost involved here, right? First off, you got to clear that land. If it runs through a forest, you got to build a trench, or you got to cut a pathway. If it is going to be off the ground, you got to cut some stone. If it's going to be through a mountain, you got to hollow out some mountain. And there are innumerable work hours in this. So who's going to foot the bill for all of these things? Well, sometimes it was people. Because again, sucking up to the public, it's a great thing. Augustus built a big old aqueduct. The Emperor Caligula, the Emperor Claudius, all of these people just give money to build these big aqueducts because it's a way to benefit the people and put yourself in the front of the political limelight. Like, hey, I need to secure my position as emperor. How am I going to get people to like me? Let's bring in some new water. And we'll, make sure that we get some really good clean stuff. That didn't actually work for Claudius's, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So sometimes you got some rich people that just footed the whole bill and said, I'm going to build the whole thing out of my pocket, which is pretty expensive. Strangest body pillow idea. Imagine hearing 3,000 people died here, right next to your ear, and after you're screaming and cussing, you turn around and Shane staying there being informative, like, this is actually aligned with the north and south direction, and if you look over there on the corner of the mound, you can see where there were actually originally 3 mounds down the parallel sides. Right. It's weird stuff like that. Like having a building named after you at a college. Exactly, Nick Slottle. This is the big thing that I built, right? Big building projects are good governance and a good way to build political capital. Absolutely. Sucking up to the people because they like being sucked up to. Sometimes they built this with spoils from war. The Oniovetus, sometimes referred to as the Old Onio. This guy right here. This particular aqueduct was built with money that was taken as spoils of a war. So this is built when Rome was fighting with Greece, specifically with Pyrrhus. And so this is Pyrrhus of Epirus, if you know about Pyrrhic victories. They did manage to get a little bit of money away from that, and they brought it back to Rome, and they're like, well, what are we going to do with this big old stack of cash? And they're like, we should build an aqueduct. So they did. This is the Oniovetus. It is not in very good shape. This one is probably the biggest chunk of it that's still standing, and it actually had fallen out of use even in the ancient world. It was one of the first ones to sort of stop being used. But, it's the old Anio. The new Anio is actually quite large. And we'll talk about that in just a bit. But how much does this cost total? Well, that's a really hard question to answer. We don't know completely. We only have one sort of footnote reference that talks about money specifically for aqueducts, and this is a bit of a mess here. There's a bit of a debate about whether or not this particular aqueduct is going to be built, whether or not the money is going to come from the public or the private, or so on and so forth. And what ends up happening is the Roman government votes for 180 million sesterces to be set aside. And you're like, well, what the devil is a sesterce? The closest calculation that I could do this afternoon on ancient Roman numismatic calculators, that's about $90 million in today's money, in US dollars. So that's a lot, right? But it's probably not as much as you would think it is to build an entire aqueduct. But the reason we don't know for sure if that particular aqueduct cost that much is because the whole voting package was, we're going to build an aqueduct and we're going to refurbish 2 other ones. So we don't know specifically how much of that money was directed to building the new one and how much of that was directed towards refurbishing the other 2. But still, $90 million is a big chunk of change, right? That's going to build you a lot of aqueduct in the ancient world. And this particular one was for the Marian Aqueduct, which was a fairly large one. So where are we going to build it? We've got some land. How are we going to fund it? We've got some money. How long does it take? This is another really hard question. Due to the specifics, we really don't know, but we can sort of hypothesize based on some tangential evidence. Usually speaking, this is probably going to take years. How do we know that? Well, in certain situations, we know that at the beginning of someone's political career at a particular position, that they lobbied to have an aqueduct built. And in a couple of instances, we actually have records where the politician in particular tried to extend their political oversight so that they could claim ownership of this. They wanted to be in office when the aqueduct was finished. So most of the terms were 1 year or 2 years. The specific ones in question here were 2 or 3 year terms. So if they started it at the beginning of the person's term and they had a 3 year term, and then they lobbied to kind of extend that period so that they could be there when it was finished, we can guess that these may have taken 2 or 3 years to build, right? So it's not an insubstantial undertaking. There's a lot of work that has to go into these. If you ask us like how much manpower it took to build one of these, there's no way to calculate that. Millions of man hours likely to cut all the stone and put all the stuff in place and level all the ground and cut all the trees and bore all the holes and do all the math and all the planning. It's a lot of work, a lot of work. It also depends on the money. Is the money, is it set aside up front, or is it supposed to be drawn from a trust? If it's not set aside up front, is the money going to continue to be there? If it is set aside up front, are people going to use it responsibly? Or are they going to blow all of it in the first year and then not have anything else and have to come back and ask for, overages? Funds also get diverted, especially during war. The government says we're going to give you all this money to build this aqueduct, and then we start off a war with Carthage, and we're like, well, we're going to put that on hold because we can't spend all that money on an aqueduct. We need to spend it on the military, right? War also takes manpower. Some of these big wars that Rome fought devastated the Roman population. And if you don't have people that are able to work, you can't build an aqueduct, right? It just doesn't work. No one builds vanity aqueducts anymore, which means I know exactly what I'm doing if I ever win the lottery. Not building an aqueduct. Well, we have pipes now and running water, so probably not as impressive now. Though it would be interesting if you could find that much marble to build out of. That would be really impressive. Also, natural disasters are very common in the ancient world, especially in a lot of places that Rome was building aqueducts. Earthquakes are very, very common. So imagine, and we actually have record of this happening on a couple of situations, especially when Claudius was making his. Earthquakes damaged the Claudian aqueduct twice. You build a section of it, things look pretty good. There's a big old earthquake, and part of it falls down. I mean, you know, the Romans were good architects, but an earthquake is an earthquake. They don't have the same level of technology that we have today to build earthquake-proof buildings. They had to build with what they had based on what they could afford and what they could manage. Now, there's a lot of naysaying about Claudius's aqueduct, but this is almost certainly put together by the Flavian dynasty, especially Vespasian, trying to make fun of the Julio-Claudians, but that's political stuff, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Roman pipes existed, but really sucked. Plague, sickness, and stuff like that too. Speaking of Roman pipes, we'll see some of that in just a little bit. I do want to, I'm not going to continue to do this, but know that we've got some more people in. I want to remind everybody that we were collecting for charity. You can click that link right there and donate to the charity drive. It's for helping kids in the hospital, which is a pretty worthy cause, to a charity that is rated very highly for proper use of its money. Just as a reminder, we get through the goal today, and we're going to get some really cool drone footage of Roman aqueducts that I visited in Turkey. Mario et Luigi, indeed. All right, so what about the sociology angle? Well, again, this is a really big show-off for emperors, right? Especially in Roman territories, because they weren't just building aqueducts that fed water to Rome. These were things that were spread out all over the ancient world in all sorts of different environments, and especially in the territories. This was a way for an emperor to really show the power of Rome, right? What have the Romans ever done for us? Aqueducts, right? That's even part of the joke in Life of Brian. There were lots of instances where an emperor would take over an area and turn a city from a regional power to a provincial capital, and one of the things that they would do to sort of show off the Roman ingenuity, let's build an aqueduct, let's get some baths going in this city, right? Let's get some big fountains going in this place, right? We're going to Romanize this city, we're going to Rome it up, right? So this is a way to bring people into the Roman world by showing them the coolness, right? Like, don't you want to be more Roman? We have cool stuff, right? So there's that angle. It's big enough that the aqueducts were actually brought into sort of the religious realm a little bit. We have some instances where the Roman government was trying to build some aqueducts, and the leaders of various cults stepped in and said, no, this isn't so great. We have a specific example where the Sibylline oracles, the priests who consulted the Sibylline oracles, tried to stop an aqueduct multiple times because their interpretation of the oracles said that it would be bad luck to bring running water to the Capitoline Hill. You did not need running water on the big hill where all the temples were. You didn't need that, and they stopped that one for a long time before they eventually brought stuff back around. Plus, they can also control the water supply for any group that would push back. That's true to a certain extent. Depends on how big the rebellion was and whether or not the territory that they rebelled against included all of the aqueduct stuff, right? Like the 5G people. So a lot of people didn't like Rome, and a lot of people that were in the Roman territories when they took over didn't really like this idea of Romanizing, right? They had their own religion, they had their own culture, they had their own history. They didn't like this idea of being part of this larger Roman territory. So one of the things that the Romans did to sort of show off how cool Rome was showed off how cool Rome was, like things like building aqueducts or building these big temples or having these big parades or granting citizenship to the populations of cities that converted to the Roman way of life quickly. Cities that were, going to say, well, we're part of the Roman Empire now, and it looks like okay, so why don't we just build a big temple to Augustus, and we'll say, we're going to kind of go all in on this Roman thing. And, one way of being rewarded for that was getting Roman citizenship, because not everybody in the empire, or especially in the older republic, had citizenship, and that had a lot of benefits to it. A lot of benefits. So, lots of stuff that goes into this. I mentioned just a bit ago that these were really big deals for like political mudslinging, right? One of the particular situations that we have here on record in this is in Frontius again, this sort of source guy that talks about all these things. The Emperor Vespasian took over, and he took over after a really tumultuous period of time where there were 4 emperors in 1 year, and things were nasty, and Nero had killed himself, and then we've got these 3 emperors that basically don't last, 3 months each. And we have Vespasian. He starts a new dynasty. This is the Flavian dynasty. And one of the things that he does as a way to sort of show his grandiose is he goes and fixes the big aqueduct that Claudius had built. And in doing so, he had these big inscriptions put on the aqueduct, like built into the aqueduct, that said, repaired by Vespasian after 9 years of disrepair. So basically, the Julio-Claudians had let these things fall apart, and it took the Flavians coming around to rebuild these aqueducts. So they're big deals. Like, seriously, they had a lot of political angling. They were socio-political tools. I mean, they did serve a very real purpose. We've already talked about how utile they were to the Roman way of life, but there's a lot of stuff that kind of went into the head games of this stuff, too. History is just like really old TMZ. Exactly. Rome did have a really great visa, right? Like an NPR report on a failing infrastructure support system. Correct. Right? So like everybody knew who was doing the work. Now, that's kind of the sociology side of it. I was going to talk about that a little bit. Or at least I suspected that you did. All right, so what about building techniques? If we've got the money, we've got the land, we've got the clearance, we've got the backing, how are we going to build this? Like physically, how are we going to build this? Well, this is where I get to put the adventure hat back on. Because I can show you how we built some of these. Well, because I'm clearly an ancient Roman. How they built some of these. And, just for fun, I'll put some more of these in chat because I like it that way. They interviewed some local farmer and made sure to record a gate opening, crunching on rocks, and the failing aqueduct and the chicken clucking in the background, right? So this is an aqueduct that is at a place in Turkey called Olba. And this is one of the areas that I have drone footage of that we will be watching if we get to our streaming donation goal for tonight. So the aqueduct runs here across this big dip, and up on top of it, because, of course I climbed up it, you can see here the water trough. So this is a fairly typical Roman aqueduct here. They're built with stone, and they have these great archways to hold everything up, because Romans are all about some arches. And the tops here were built out of stone. Now, if we look at it this way, originally these would have had tiles that went over the roof, to sort of cover the water here. It would not have been open to the air. And the tiles that went over them were pretty great. Water is so pretentious for calling it an aqueduct and not a water bridge. Well, aqueduct, water bridge, it's kind of the same thing. But what's cool about this one here is an example of a lot of stuff, because a lot of the work on these was done underground. And what's sort of weird, when we think of aqueducts, we think of the big arches and the big stone structures. But most of this stuff was actually done underground. About 80% of all of the aqueducts across the empire were actually underground, and they were running through pipes. And I just so happened to be able to show you something. So this is a section of a Roman pipe. This came from Turkey, not at this particular site, but this is what a Roman pipe would have looked like. It's made out of clay. It's pretty sturdy. You can see here how thick it is, right? So this is the original thickness of the pipe. This would have been at one end, and I don't know if you can see it quite well, but there's a little bit of a flange down here where the opening gets a little bit bigger, where the water would, or the pipe would have connected to another one. I've got some other photos later on that I'll show you how this works. But this is a fairly standard water pipe, you know, and the inside here is a, you know, fairly standard dimension. It's about, 3 inches or maybe about 10 centimeters wide. Interesting note about this particular pipe, this came from that bath structure at Eisenoi. And we know for a fact that the Emperor Domitian spent some time hanging out at Eisenoi and went to the baths there. So I joke, and this is purely a joke and it's kind of a ha-ha, that in the sediment in this particular pipe, I actually have the encrusted remains of the Antichrist's bathwater. It's a really long and drawn out tale, but there's a particular view of the a particular Roman interpretation of the Apocalypse of John, where Domitian is the Antichrist, and it's an interesting joke that I make, that I have the tacit, touchable mud that was on the Antichrist's foot, or maybe his butt crack. I don't know. It's just a big joke. There's no way of telling that, of course. They just don't make pipes like they used to. That's true. Sagiri, what's going on? How's it going? Hope you're having a good one. Did you have to explain that pipe to customs? I did. And, they didn't really care. It's not really an expensive item. It doesn't have any actual value. It's broken. But yeah, it went through customs. All of the items that I have gone through customs. They are not looted. They go through and, look at stuff just like everything else. So, it's not really valuable. This isn't going to sell for, thousands of dollars on the open market. It's just like that might sell for like $5. That's just a crappy piece of Roman pipe. Have you tried selling said bathwater? No, I haven't, Noger. Antichrist bathwater, though, that would probably sell out pretty quick. If you're not already following my friend Noger, please do so. He's a really smart guy that knows a whole bunch of philosophy stuff that makes you smarter just by hanging around him. A coprolite, perhaps so, a coprolite. Depends on who you get. Some people are buttholes. That's true. Not everybody at customs is good. So there we go. Anyway, but I mentioned specifically that some of this stuff was done in underground channels, like this thing. So on the back side of the hill from the aqueduct that I just showed you is this, and this actually comes out of the mountain, and this is the water trough of the aqueduct. And if we move over here, you can see here that this is pretty high up elevated wise. This is a friend of the channel, Not a Figment, who frequently is in the chat, that was on my trip with me to Turkey. But yeah, this is a tunnel that was carved out of the side of this mountain, and it goes all the way through and connects with the big aqueduct area on the other side. So the Romans bored holes through mountains. And what's really interesting here, and we have to remember this, is, like water only flows downhill. So as they're carving these particular situations, that they've always got to be going downhill, right? So carve through the mountain, but make sure there's a little bit of a decline, right? Da-da-bum-ba-dum-bum. I find it annoying. I buy something that has value-added tax included, but still have to pay value-added tax if I were to move to another country. That's really annoying, Siguri. I was unaware of how that worked, but that does sound annoying. Were there also clowns in the sewers back in ye olden times? No. These are not sewers. There weren't sewers in the ancient world, nor were there sewers in the medieval world, despite what Skyrim tells you. Giant sewers where you can run down them and there are rats in the bottom of them, that's completely created by fantasy. Those didn't even exist even in most of the Renaissance era. That is an appurtenance and a anachronistic view of history. It's not good. Other stone archways. I don't know why I took off the adventure hat because I need to put this back on because we're going to go look at more stuff that I've seen. This is an aqueduct here that is in another part of Turkey around a city called Antiochene Pisidia. So this particular big aqueduct runs across these mountains and the city is actually over here. Now, you might note that this is from a fairly high angle because this was taken with a drone. And if we get to our charity goal tonight, we can fly all the way down this pathway of the aqueduct, all the way over and get to the actual city. And I'll show you even where the aqueduct ended up with a big nymphaeum in the city. So if you want to fly that pathway, here's another potential angle that might entice you. So we're going to start right here, and then we go all the way over these hills and get over here to where the city is. Pretty interesting stuff. Pretty interesting stuff. Just as a hint. I've been to Rome several times. Not even under the Emperor's Palace, especially not under the Emperor's Palace. I know that's where the blades are, and in Oblivion, that's where you meet up with Septim, and he gives you the charge, and you have to go close all the Oblivion gates, but it's not even there. You crack a terrible joke and offend Shane to his core. No, I'm not offended. It's just like, people come up with stuff, and then it's like, bleh. He's very protective of his ancient bodies. Yes, I did go to Rome. Anyway, so we've got holes through stuff. We've got big old hills. We also have channels that actually run through the middle of a city, like these. So this is in a place called Hierapolis. And just out in the middle of the city, like right here's a person. This is an aqueduct that carried water through the middle of the city. Well, I mean, it's in ruins. Don't get too angry at it. There's more of it, but you can see here that they've got these channels that run all over the city. So there's one that runs out this way and it comes back around and it comes over here. There's this guy right here that moves stuff around. There's this one over here that kind of loops over this way. Water ran all the way through this ancient city, and it's really cool how they managed to move all of this stuff across such a particularly wide area. That's pretty cool, right? So we've got all kinds of uses of how we move these things around. I've already showed you the piece of pipe. We also have the use of Roman concrete. And I'll keep the adventure hat on and I'll show you this. Now, of course, this isn't necessarily, it's clearly not an aqueduct. This is the ceiling of the Pantheon. This is a temple to all of the gods that was in Rome. And what's really fascinating about this particular dome is this is not cut stone. This dome here is completely made out of concrete. And it is still today the largest freestanding concrete dome that humans have ever made. It's a fascinating piece of architectural brilliance. This square thing right here that looks like just really neat decoration actually reduces the overall weight of the dome because it's not solid right there. That empty space looks really cool and decorative, but it actually serves a larger purpose to lessen the weight of the dome overall so that it doesn't collapse in on itself. But Romans were excellent users of concrete. Concrete was a really, really big usage. They use this stuff all the time. And of course, they can use this as well building stuff for aqueducts. Again, I told you lots of pictures tonight. But that's okay because I think people like pictures. They also have these things. So this is a stone pipe where they have carved this stone to be hollow. And you can see here that it's got a bit of a flange on it. This would have met up with another one that you can kind of see in these pictures, right? So one side has the pokey outy part right here, and the other side has the receiver part. So this is typical of, like male-female stuff. These would have been built into parts of city walls or perhaps built into the aqueduct themselves. Some of the aqueducts had multiple water channels, and some of them were these carved stone pieces where water would have flowed through this particular chunk here, and it would have, of course, been lined up. This would have been this is on the other side of the hill from Antioch in Pisidia. So this would have been attached to the last big piece of aqueduct that I showed you. I do have another picture here of a pipe. So this is a more complete picture of a pipe. This is again as at Antioch in Pisidia. So here's the full clasp right here. This would have met into a flange on the other side of the pipe, and this length would have probably been like 9 or 10 more inches, probably 40 or 50 so more centimeters on the edge of this. They really only made pipes that were about yay long in pieces, because if something broke, you'd want to be able to fix that fairly easily. Would they have had some sort of sealant to keep the water from leaking out? Yes, they would have either used concrete to seal that up, depending on how readily available concrete was. They may have just used pitch, which or bitumen, which is basically like plant-based sticky stuff that's really good at sealing stuff up. So the original version of duct tape, basically. That's what Fonrail is going to look like on 2,000 years. How big was the city? Maddie, if we get to our goal, there's an aerial picture of the whole city. It's a fairly large city. Antioch in Pisidia was a regional capital of the Roman province there. It would have probably had 50,000 people living there. It was a fairly large city. Do you know how they made those square sections in the ceiling? I don't know how you mold concrete like that. If there was that, was it a massive mold? They did it upside down. So they built an internal wooden structure that would have gone all around the inside of the dome, and they built it like that. And then they applied the concrete to the outside of it, and they did the external concrete in rings, starting with the bottom. So you make the bottom ring, and you go up one, you build some support structure, and build another ring above it. So they sort of poured it moving up like that to the oculus at the top of it, which is the oculus is just the big hole at the top where the sun comes through. Molded upside down, like Viper said. The Romans were brilliant when it came to architectural stuff like this, and their use of concrete is amazing. It really, really is. I don't say that just because I love Rome. So lots of stuff. Now, I mentioned ones that had multiple waterways. Let me show you this guy, and I have to take off the adventure hat because I have not been here. This is a very famous aqueduct called the Pont du Gard, which is in modern-day France. It has multiple sections of waterway. And what's really interesting about this one is that it has multiple troughs. So if part of the aqueduct needed to be repaired, you could shut one side of it down to continue water flowing on the other side. And this is humongous, by the way. So like here are some people in the picture right here. This is an enormous. This, by the way, the Pont du Gard is the tallest aqueduct that Rome ever built. It's enormous. It's about 40 meters. I'm sorry, about 48 meters tall. So it's about like 110 feet. It's really, really tall. So this is like a 10-story building, basically. It's an enormous aqueduct, and you can see here that at the bottom, they have these really great engineered icebreakers. So when the water flow comes along, you don't want a flat surface facing the flow of the water. You want these pointy ones here. So if ice starts forming, it doesn't put a lot of pressure on the aqueduct itself. It'll break them. Also, if there are big obstructions in the river, like like a bunch of timber falls in the river or something like that, it doesn't block up the flow of the water. These points right here will shift things so that they flow under and around instead of just getting blocked up here at the front. Really brilliant stuff. Is the aqueduct huge or the French tiny? The French are a bit smaller, but the aqueduct is actually quite large. I'm just picking on the French. They're fine. Their World Cup team is doing excellent right now, and there are some above average height players on the French national team. So it proves to stand that not every French person is short. I'm not being insulting to the French people. Of the groups left, they're one of the ones that I would not mind winning. I really don't want Portugal to win. I really, really don't want Portugal to win. They looked really strong today, though, and that bothers me. Well, I mean, it's a fairly offensive term there. And if we're looking at whose culture has been dominated the longest by external forces, I don't know how many fingers we can point in certain parts of the world if we're just being offensive. I say that out of love, right? Not related, but actually directly related. There was a big poll that came out earlier this week about whether or not the people of Ireland and Northern Ireland supported unification. Unification was overwhelmingly supported in the Republic of Ireland, so that like Ireland, the country, and union with the UK was overwhelmingly supported in Northern Ireland. But what was interesting is that both sides showed a pretty high interest in holding a referendum. So like that had about 70% support on both sides. So even though the North was still favoring the United Kingdom, they were open to having a referendum on that. Now a referendum's not coming, but it's just an interesting thing. Nice kneecaps you got there. I was just picking on you, man. There is much love between us. I hope you understand that. I just had to kind of push back a little bit about that. So we've got pipes, we've got concretes, we've got channels, we've got stone arches, we've got boring holes through the mountains. There's so much technology that goes in this. But let's understand again a little bit about hydrodynamics, right? This concept of water only flows downhill is something that's really easy to grasp mentally speaking, right? But how does the math work on this? So that big thing that I showed you, the Pont de Garde, what's really interesting is that it is on such a small grade that over the course of 50 kilometers, this is about 30 miles, right? So over the course of 50 kilometers, the entire aqueduct is on such a small grade that it only drops down 17 meters in elevation, which is math, that's about 30 feet, right? So, no, it's more than that. It's about 40 feet. I don't do math very well. 2 meters is about 6 feet. So 17 meters, 2 and a 17 is math. 9 times 2 is, 9 times 6 would be 54. About 50 feet. About 50 feet. So over the course of 30 miles, it drops 50 feet in height from the beginning to the end. Or that's 17 meters over the course of 50 kilometers. And it's steady all the way down, right? It's at the same angle all the way across, which is just absolutely ridiculous if you're trying to figure out math. Like, what angle does something have to be? And how precise do the measurements have to be on the actual building itself to set that proper angle so that over the course of 50 miles, 50 kilometers or 31 miles, you have the same grade all the way across. That is fascinating and amazing amounts of math. Is in skinny tubes it flows upwards. That's true because we have siphons. That's how trees work. Sure. They did have some siphon technology. They did have some water pump technology, but in the volume of water that they were moving, that would have been really difficult to handle. What's up, Sofa? How's it going? That is absurd. The quality control is extremely high. It was extremely, really high. They were fantastic engineers. What's up, Moose? How's it going? So we've got a lot of stuff going on here. Brakes were even built in at certain points. So the Romans sort of understood a rudimentary concept of oxygenation. So they knew that water, even if it was moving at a still pace, could still get kind of stale and nasty. So at certain points, every distance or so, they would actually build in breaks where the water would drop for a little while and sort of make bubbles to reoxygenate the water, which is fascinating because again, they don't know anything about atoms. They don't know about reoxygenating water. You know, that's the reason you have to have little bubbles in your fish tank to keep oxygen in your water, right? But they understood that in the ancient world. Now, they didn't understand atoms and stuff like that, but they knew that if they let their water bubble a little bit and put a little bit of a rapid in there where it could splash, that it would make the water better and it would make it fresher, right? So crazy stuff like that. Seems like ancient folks were far more intelligent than common folk nowadays, even with our free flow of information. Well, it's amazing at what they were able to figure out given the tools that they had. But let's remember, human beings, since we became Homo sapiens, have had the same neurological architecture, right? We have had the same level of neuroplasticity in our brains since we became Homo sapiens. So every human being from any period of time is just as potentially intelligent as any other human being, right? There has not been a substantial enough time from the creation of what we would consider modern society to us to create a substantive enough genetic change in our overall population. So civilization hasn't made us any smarter, just technically speaking. Our brain architecture is the same as an ancient person's brain architecture. Our neuroplasticity is the same level as an ancient human's neuroplasticity. Our imagination is just as powerful as an ancient human's imagination. The issue that we run into very frequently in situations like this is, how did they come up with those ideas without knowing what we know now? And the answer is, they didn't have anything but trial and error. They did all of this stuff a million times and figured out what worked. And they did have writing, and they were able to pass down knowledge from generation to generation. And when they came up with something that was important, again, they put a lot of money into this, right? They put a ton of effort and a ton of just man hours into figuring out how to make all of this stuff work. And when they figured it out, they just copied it over and over and over again, right? So while it might seem like they're smarter than us or we're smarter than them, somehow we look at it, it's really just they really inventively use the tools that they have, right? There are things that we do now that would blow their minds, right? Like this little thing right here, as goofy as it seems, like this cell phone right here is technology that would destroy their world, right? The concept that the stuff that we have today that we take for granted is stuff that they would have taken for granted, right? Like if you would have walked into Rome and was like, hey, check out this cool aqueduct, a citizen of Rome that had been born there was just like, I look at that thing every friggin' day. I don't really care. I just know that when I need to go get water, I can get water from it, right? They did not know microbiology. That is correct. But they had this sort of like intuitional understanding of things. Like they knew if I bubble this water, it will be better. We're only seeing what survived at the time. We're not seeing what's missing or negative. That's true. We've been the same for about 200,000 years. Yeah, exactly. But no ancient folks are on the internet commenting about how primitive we are. That's true. They're a lot better at holding their tongues than we are. Yeah. Hygiene was a problem. They understood a lot of this stuff, but I mean, they still got sick a lot. I mean, how many times do we hear about sicknesses going around? Plague, uh, diphtheria, malaria, a lot of this stuff. Right. It's also easy to look at this like a team of people did this when it was a lot more than that. Absolutely, Ted. That's an important thing to remember. Remember here, we're talking about things like the Roman government putting on a contract and employing thousands of people to build stuff like this. Understanding of hygiene and diseases had changed a lot, but it's built on thousands of years of research. Well, yep. They knew. I mean, they knew traditional stuff, but I mean, I get what you're saying. I'll just let that ride because we'll end up in a discussion talking about Galen and Hippocrates, and that's so far away from where we are, and we need to sort of move on because it would be really cool to show drone footage. Okay, so other things that they had settling basins. Now I mentioned this earlier on that the big aqueduct that Claudius built was criticized for not having the cleanest of water. So what they actually did at the headwater, they built this giant settling basin where they had a big old pit where the water would sort of come out of the spring and it would run a little ways and then it would just sort of go into this larger big deep pit where the sediment would sort of fall out of it before it flowed into the aqueduct. So they knew we could get a lot of the sediment out of this water if we just let it sit for a little while. They had all sorts of sluices and they had all sorts of catch basins and stuff all over the cities so that they could fill this stuff up and move stuff around. One of the most famous examples that we can do here is that they used to be able to flood the Colosseum. So the Colosseum in Rome, they could divert water from these aqueducts into the Colosseum and literally flood it so that they could have like fake naval battles in this area, and that's just hydrodynamically amazing that they can figure out how to do this kind of stuff, right? Catch up with chat. It's like the joke Louis C.K. makes. There's no end to the amount of amazing things we can humans do if you just throw enough human suffering at it. I feel that's a sick Roman burn. Your aqueduct delivers foul water. Ha ha ha. Well, the reason we know about the dirty water is that our buddy Frontius sort of throws a little bit of shade at Claudius for using poor materials. Well, come over here. The puppy is with us. Come over here, and we'll get the puppy on stream. Come here. Come and see me. Oh yes, come and see. Come on. Oh yes, here's the puppy. Hello, puppy. What are you doing? You just went to the side that is out, didn't you? Oh yes. Oh yes, you did. What did you do? Did you sniff some things? Did you see something interesting? Oh, hello, puppy. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What are you doing? You want to give me sugars? Are you just coming to say hello? Oh, a big puppy sneeze. Goodness gracious. Where are you going? I just wanted to say hello. Okay, that works too. That was the puppy. Oh yes. I ate some poo and then a dead squirrel, so let me give you mouth kisses. Both are potential. She has done both before. Eaten poo and killed squirrels. So, there we go. What about maintenance? How do we keep these things up? Well, again, I mentioned the curator aquarum. This was a position that was appointed in the city of Rome to keep the water flowing, right? And this position was one that shows up in some of the other big cities whose job it is basically to, keep the water flowing and keep everything in maintenance and keep everything going. There were a lot of things to keep up. There's a lot of, stuff that goes into this. One of them was something that the Romans called travertine, which I can actually show you. So, that's images. I'll show you that in just a second. Let me hold this back up. So in the pipe here, you can see this is the outside of the pipe. This is where it was. Let me back up a little bit because the focus is off. Okay, so this is the outside of the pipe. You can see internally here where it was baked. Then we have the inside of the pipe that's glazed, and then you see this stuff. this sort of like concrete buildup looking thing here. You can see that it's thicker at the bottom than it is at the top, so this would have been the top of the pipe. This stuff is what the Romans called travertine. Basically, if you know about hard water, that's what travertine is. It's like this stuff right here. All of this concreted material is just stuff that would have been in wastewater. So this pipe would have been carrying things away from the bath, most likely. So you can just see all of the gunk. And when the travertine stuff got built up, that pipe needed to be replaced. And there were some things that you could do to try to wash it out or keep it clean. But sometimes you just had to build the pipe over again. Lots of things. Pipes, stone, tunnels built through mountains, lots of stuff were used to build aqueducts. But concrete was part of it, yes. Shai Hulud is confused, right? The water must not flow, says Shai Hulud. The network improvement, yeah, exactly. Have you ever been tempted to carve a tablet with Fumius ad te perevine de tua cur... and bury it somewhere in Italy. We have been trying to contact you about your extended warranty. No, I haven't considered doing that, but that is that's an interesting potential there. That's an interesting idea. Anyway, travertine buildup. And we know all of this stuff, by the way, because Frontius, in his handbook on how to run the Roman aqueducts, wrote a whole portion at the end of it of, here's how to keep up the aqueducts. So you got to watch out for travertine buildup. One of the biggest things that he says is an issue, you got to watch out for tree roots, because tree roots are trouble. Tree roots would break pipes. Tree roots would block up underground passageways. They would tilt stone, right? If there's a tree growing too close to one of the pillars, it could tilt the pillar and throw the whole thing off. Tree roots were apparently a really big issue that you got to watch out for. Got to keep up with that stuff. Earthquakes, that's a big one, right? Earthquakes can cause really big trouble, right? Really big trouble. Sabotage. This is not something that is immune, right? An aqueduct is a big, blatant, fixture that says, hey, there's water moving through there, and hey, on the other end of that, there's a city that needs that water. So during wartime, sabotaging the aqueduct, it was a thing, and it was something that we have record of. One of the reasons why Romans built one of the early aqueducts the way that they did was because they were worried about some of the other Italian tribes blocking off their water supply. So they moved the angle of the aqueduct to keep it in land that they controlled, because they didn't want to run into some Samnite or some Etruscan. No, the Etruscans were way gone by that point. Some Roman enemy to show up and break the aqueducts, right? They're still massive trouble. Yep. Ye old rotorooter. Rotorus ruderus. Like they destroyed the aqueducts or put poison in the water supply. Usually they would divert the aqueduct, because the cool thing about an army is that they also need water. So they would just stop it up and divert it and keep it from running into the city. Not a lot of poisoning the water supply. There's a snake in my boot. Someone's poisoned the water hole. Not poisoning the water supply is much more for wells and cities, not necessarily aqueducts. I'm going to sabotage the aqueduct is my new euphemism for going to the bathroom. I'm going to sabotage the aqueduct. That's great. Poisoning the water, just never a good idea for anybody. Yeah, that's true. Also, looting. And you're like, what the devil? Who wants to loot an aqueduct? Here's the great thing about it. Aqueducts are made out of cut stone. Cut stone is expensive in the ancient world. And if I know that out in the middle of this giant nowhere field, there's a whole bunch of cut stone that I can just sort of take and nobody will know, I'm going to go take it. And there are a lot of aqueduct stones that just get looted, and then somebody's got to go friggin' find all this stuff and repair it, right? Since I teach history, do you happen to know about books on Nordic mythology? Yes. The best book that I can tell you to go for is what's called the Edda. Let me type this here. The Edda, and it comes in two versions. There's one version that's called the Poetic Edda, which is written in old stanza, which is actually closer to the original sort of way that they would have been sung or recited. But then there's also the prose Edda. So if you want to read something that's more of a narrative, go for the prose. And the particular translation that I refer to is one by Snorri Sturluson. So depending on which version you would prefer to read, I would tell you to go read the Edda. And particularly the translation by Snorri Sturluson is the one that I like. Now, to be fair, recently Neil Gaiman did a translation of the Edda that is really good. It's not as academic, but it's good. It's more of a narrative. So that's what I would tell you to look for. Cut stone equals copper nowadays. Pretty much, yeah. Like, we're going to go steal the pipes out of your building. Rock hustling, yeah, pretty much. I was looking for a book on Nordic mythology that's a little fun to read and not too much monotonous. So if you read the Edda, that is literally the mythology, like the myths themselves translated. So you're going to be reading all about how much of a drunken jerk face that Thor is, and how crazy and weird Odin does, all this junk about like strapping himself to a tree and trading his eye for knowledge, and like those are the actual stories, and it's quite fascinating. I really do enjoy that one. My favorite is Rihanna with a cold version Umberetta. Well, there you go. That's where you get Thor dressing as a woman and Loki covering. Yeah, absolutely. That's where you get the story of the goats that Thor has, that you can kill and eat as many times as you want to, as long as you don't break the bones. And then some idiot breaking the bones because he didn't hear it right, and Thor killing him with his fist, and all that fun stuff. Lots of good stories in the Edda. Very much not boring. Very much not boring. Okay, so a few superlatives, and I'll put the adventure hat back on. Always wanted to know more about Odin. You'll be able to read a lot about him in the Edda. He was a ruthless jerk face, which is the way that most kings of the gods are. Adventure hat is back on because I'm going to show you another thing that I've seen. This is the longest, like this portion here is clearly not all of it. But this is part of the Constantinople Aqueduct. This was built by the Emperor Valens, and it is in total 426 kilometers long. So that's about, math long in miles, what is that, 30, 60, 240, that's about 250 miles. So 426 kilometers, about 250 miles, and this brings water into the city of Constantinople. And today it's just part of the middle of the city, and you can literally drive under it, but it's really friggin' cool. And I was really glad to get to see that. So that's the longest. The highest I've already shown you is Pont du Gard, which we've seen already, but I wanted to remind you that this is the tallest. Again, it's about 48 meters or 106 feet. And then if we look at ones that are still in use today, there is one that is still in use today, and it's called the Aqua Vergina, specifically the Aqua Vergina Antica. And if you go to Rome and you've ever seen this thing like I have, this is the Trevi Fountain. And the water that flows out of the Trevi Fountain is still delivered by one of the ancient Roman aqueducts even today. So there are these that are still in use. Of course, the Trevi Fountain is not ancient Roman. This was built during the Renaissance, but pretty cool stuff, right? Pretty cool stuff. I wonder what they pay to keep the maintenance on that. I don't know. It's probably a lot. But the Pont de Garde is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so there is some international monies for that. If that's the one that you were talking about, it's a really big tourist site as well in France. So there's like a lot of money that goes into keeping that up. Would you say architecture and technology made the Romans powerful? Yeah, that's definitely part of it. They could build infrastructure that was really, really, really impressive. The bridges and the roads that they had were excellent and are still around today. And the aqueducts that they built were impressive, and their architecture and their technological skill, and especially their like mathematics and their planning and their long-term thought, they were really, really impressive. Team science, boop, boop, boop. And security, it's perfectly okay. Like, you don't ever have to apologize for asking questions here. This is a like hashtag safe place, right? So you can ask whatever you want to. I take Anonymous. Thank you very much for donating $55 to our Tiltify goal, which is now sitting at $200, which was the ultimate goal itself. So thank you for that. That was very, very generous of you. Now, I will say this. Just because we've hit the goal doesn't mean that we can't go over. So if you want to give some more, we can always take up some more, right? And again, this is going to Starlight Children's Foundation, who is a charity that helps kids out when they're in the hospital, to try to help them have experiences that kids would normally have when they're not in the hospital, right? Something teachers always used to us. Julius always said Belgians were the most courageous. Belgians did not exist, but more like the people from that area. The Romans had some trouble with the people that lived in that area. At that point, they were like the Frisians. Well, no, they weren't Frisians, because that was a lot later. There weren't Germanic people in that area. They were all, well, I don't know. It depends on how you consider them Germanic. To a certain extent, the Gauls, well, the Gauls were Celtic. When Caesar got up in that direction, he had beaten the Gauls up pretty thoroughly, right? So the Gauls are down here. He had plans to go over here and invade England, but when he got to this area, he ran into some trouble, right? This area was pretty tough and had a bunch of really stout people, and that was keeping him from being able to establish a really firm beachhead right here to use to invade Britannia. And it wasn't until the Emperor Claudius, which was about 50 years later, that the Romans were eventually able to sort of pacify this region to get over here to conquer Britain. Whomever created the Roman concrete mix has never received enough credit. That's true, but we don't know exactly who made it. We don't know. We don't know. Now, as promised, because we have hit our goal, concrete used today is crap compared to the Roman concrete. Plus, the concrete we use now gets ruined by the rebar we put in it, which oxidizes and rusts and breaks down the concrete. That is, to an extent, very much true. We still have a bunch of walls from the Roman invasion. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in that area from when Rome first invaded back in that would have been the 1st century BC into the 1st century AD when Rome was taking over that area. So right around the turn of the AD to BC point. But since we hit our donation goal, we are now going to get to watch really cool drone footage. So thank you to whomever donated. And again, just because we hit the goal does not mean that we cannot continue in donation. We can give as much as you all are interested in giving. Now, as a way to set this up, a few things. First off, let me get this up. So the first area that we're going to look at. Oh, it's playing. Nope, pause. Don't, nope, go back. The area that we're looking at is right here. So this is the ancient city of Olba. It's in a region of Turkey that's referred to as Kilikia at that time. So this would have been part of the Kilikia territory. And specifically, we're looking at this thing right here. So this is the aqueduct, and the water that is being moved in this particular aqueduct is coming from over here. There's a spring over here in this mountain area, and you can see that the aqueduct is going to run over this way and up into these hills. So we're going to be looking at it from this area. Is there oh, there's a photo, but okay. We can look at it here. This is a picture that someone posted, but anyway, this is what we're going to be looking at. What do you mean better than maps? Sure, I'd be happy to listen to stuff. So anyway, the aqueduct runs this way, runs across this big gap, runs through this mountain to deliver water to the ancient city, which was on this side. You can see the theater here. And this thing right here was where the water would dump out in this big fountain. And we'll see this in just a second because we're going to watch it happen in a flyby. So let me go over here to full screen, and we're going to full screen this guy, and then we're going to play this video. So I'm not going to be able to see your chat right now. I'll have to catch up with you on the other side. But we're gonna fly around. So this is the aqueduct channel. These things over here are tombs, these little squares, tombs cut out of the side of the mountain. But you can see here that there were towers that were up on this hill to sort of protect this region, because again, you don't want people screwing around with your water. I actually just thought of a way that I could see my own chat if I use this on my phone, so I can still answer questions for people if they had them. How do I go to my channel? Oh, you can still see me. Hey, how's it going? Where's my chat? Where's my chat? I can't see the chat. So here we get the waterway coming back around. I should be wearing the adventure hat for this, right? And let me back it up just a touch. Right about here, right about where this bush is, the water path goes into the mountain, and it's going to pop out on the other side over here. And we're going to be able to see a couple of instances like right here and right here where that water path is going to be able to move through, and then it kind of cuts down and comes around this way. But we'll see all that because we'll see it in just a second. But you can see how all of this is going to move, and it's really fascinating because if you remember earlier in the stream, I showed you a big hole in the side of the mountain with my friend Not a Figment sitting right beside it. We're going to sort of see where that pops out. So again, notice that the aqueduct is coming across, and then it goes into the mountain. And remember, this is all at that slight grade, right? Because we still have to be moving the water downhill, even if we're boring a hole through the mountain, which is, again, just ridiculously fascinating. But right here, this is where the water pops out. And you can see it right there, right? So that's and we're going to kind of zoom in here a little bit and get a better view of this channel. Because it pops out of the mountain and it runs in a channel right here, and it actually runs back into the mountain right over here. Just amazing amount of architectural design. Crazy amounts of stuff. And so it's going to run through the edge of this mountain and around the edge of the mountain to pop out at the back end of the ancient city, which is right over here. Now, Olba itself was not the biggest of the cities. You can see some of the track right here. But this big guy right here would have been another one of those nymphaeum, these big fountain things. And you can see right here, there's a big water basin where you could have like washed or done some religious stuff, ablutions perhaps. This is the remains of the ancient city. This is a theater. There's the proscenium, the seating. So here's your sort of fountainy water place. You can see the water would have come through right there. And again, this is coming from a hill that's like way over this hill right here and over on this side of this hill that's right about here. Just an absolutely crazy amount of engineering that went into this. We're about to pop up and be able to see the other side over here. You can see where the aqueduct would have run had it still been standing. The tunnel right here used to be go-inable. Like you used to be able to sort of move into the part where it went through the hill. And this basically goes sort of straight through this ridge right here to get to the other side. But this is just an absolutely fascinating area. One of the cooler places that I got to go to in Turkey. So the rest of the flight is just sort of coming back home with the drone. So thanks to our buddy whose name is Tyrod Ganiknu, again, who provided this kind of stuff. Let me catch up with chat here. Flight Simulator 2020 does a great job when you want to see something. Well, that's cool. Amazing video quality, it really is. Water's running down that hill and down those tracks and filling up someone's cisterns. Pretty much. Pretty much. All right, Black Apple, thanks again for dropping by. I hope you have a good one. Yep, don't work too hard. All right, so that was one. That's at Olba. Let me show you another one because we have yet another. All right, so this one is at Pisidian Antioch. And we'll go over here and we'll do this on full screen. Let me start this back over because we missed some stuff. So again, here's our aqueduct. Now, this is the only part of it that's still standing. But what's interesting here is that we're going to be able to see the track or the path of the aqueduct based on the stone remains. And what's really interesting here is that the water trough of the aqueduct would have remained again on a slight decline, even though it's going over all these hills. So the aqueduct ends right here, but it continues. You can see the remains of it moving up this hill. So even though the bottom of the aqueduct is moving up and down the hills like this, the top of the aqueduct has still got that slight downward lean, which again is just fascinating to understand. So we'll follow this pathway around. The ancient city is over this hill over here. So we're coming down. The aqueduct is here. You can still see where the stones would have been. And it's going to sort of follow this modern road right here. We can see it coming down this way. We still see some bricks here. And it's going to come down in this direction, and you can still see some of the bases of the pillars down here if you look, and it would have come down this direction, and it sort of takes a curve. Here's a shepherd with some sheep, and goes up this direction here, and then it comes into the back part of the city over here. Now, a few things when the camera's about to pan right here. Okay, so that's not necessarily the best frame, but a few things. So the aqueduct fed into the back of the city right here, and you can kind of see this big dip. This would have been a catch basin, and you see this big thing right here, which would have been another one of those really cool nymphaeums. And we're about to get a view down the main road of the city. So this thing right here is what's called the Cardo. So this is the main road of Antiochene Pisidia. So there's a big north-south road, and then there's a big east-west road. And all of the city would have been like over here. The whole thing is excavated. Only a lot of these larger buildings were excavated, but you could dig anywhere around here and run into the ancient remains of the city. There's a whole bunch of it down here, and there's more of it over here. There's more of it over this hill. So let's kind of just fly around here a little bit. Again, this would have been the big fountain sort of at the end of the road. So you walk into the city down here, and you see all the way down this paved road. You get this really big looking fountain with all this water coming out of it. This is a church. These are just stalls and buildings over here. This big thing over here is a carved out of the side of the hill temple to Augustus. This is one of the largest temples to Augustus ever. And if you know anything about Caesar Augustus himself, he wrote this big thing called the Res Gestae Divi Augusti, or the Deeds of the Divine Augustus, and we have 3 copies of it extant. One of them came from this temple. I have been to 2 of the locations where they had found part of it. I have not been to the 3rd location, but it's kind of like a really weird out of the way area, and it's kind of a bucket list place that I want to get to go to where the other part of the Res Gestae was. But anyway, this whole temple complex right here would have just been enormous. This was all paved. It had colonnades down both sides. So this is the sort of, again, the east-west part of the city right there. And that's that particular part. Earlier was running up that hill. I see. So this area fields. So is this area fields now? I'm surprised how little greenery there is there. It's kept mowed down. And it's done that way because this is, in many parts, an active archaeological site, and this area is owned by the Turkish government. So they run it as a tourist attraction. It cost us, I think, like maybe $5 to get in and wander all over Antiochene Pisidia. But that is enough to sort of keep everything handled. But yeah, it's all mowed. So anyway, there are some super special bonuses because we got to the donation goal. Thank all of you who donated to keep that goal up and running. And at this point, I have wrapped everything that I had planned. So if you all have questions, Antiochene Pisidia, by the way, is right about here. So if there are any further questions, I can answer them. If you all have any points that you want to redeem, now is the time to do so. Otherwise, it is time for us to go do a raid. What up, Tuna? Tuna made it, and it's time to go raid. So, well done, Tuna. You showed up right when we were about to go. But that's sort of how it usually goes, unfortunately speaking. I don't have a raid target at the moment to go raid anybody. So let me see if any of these people are on that are supposed to be streaming at the moment, and I'll just make a raid target. So the part of the donation goal charity drive thing is that there's a big spreadsheet of people who are streaming, and I'm supposed to raid somebody else doing the particular charity situation. So let me go see if any of these people that are supposed to be streaming are on. And if so, yeah, we're going to go raid these people. Looks interesting. Kind of up my alley anyway. So yeah, but before we go, again, any questions, any stuff like that? Who would win in a fight, Roman Legion or modern Russian army? Modern Russian army, because even if 30% of their bombs fail, one would wipe out a whole legion. Right? Just the way that it goes. Let me guess, water flowed downhill. Pretty much. Do we need to have a viewer request for next time? Yeah, that's actually a good idea. Let me see who's on the list. This would be a viewer request purchase if we have people that are around to purchase. So do we have a David? David, do you want to buy a viewer request? The water must flow downhill. Lumpy Dragon Potato, are you still around? And do you want to buy a viewer request? JMR Killer, are you around? And do you want to buy a viewer request? Or Nixolotl, are you around? And do you want to buy a viewer request? So these are the people officially on the list. So I will take anybody. Nixolotl, you are here. Would you like to buy a viewer request? Do you have one ready, and do you have the points ready to do it? If so, I will turn it on and we will do the thing. Unless David, Lumpy, or JMR speaks out in, let's say, like the next minute or two. Viewer reward channel points. How much is it again? You may have squandered your points on the Opinion Hat stream. If you have chosen an adventure before, so the first time you do it is 10,000, and everyone after that is currently 20,000. Noger and one other contribute to the All Opinion Hat stream. You're at 9.6, alas. Okay. Well, let's open it up to the broader conversation. Is there anybody in chat that has 10,000 points if it is your first Choose Your Own Adventure, or 20,000 points if it is your second Choose Your Own Adventure that you would like to spend on purchasing a Choose Your Own Adventure viewer request stream? So this is open for anybody. I have the list to go through first, and then we'll just sort of take all comers. And if nobody wants to, we'll take opinions and we'll have another vote, which is cool by me. Anybody want to? You have burned your somewhere. You only have 2.5K. That's okay. It'll be, they keep coming. Would 12 Days of Christmas work? I'm not sure exactly what you mean, the 12 Days of Christmas. Not, I'm not sure exactly what 12 Days of Christmas, like, do you want me to go through why a partridge in a pear tree is an important thing? If that's the case, no, I'm not going to do that. That sounds horrible. No, that sounds horrible. Lords of Leaping, no. That's not enough material to get an entire stream out of. Turtle doves are signs of love. Partridge is a tasty bird. A pear tree was something that was really hard to grow in parts of the world, so pears were expensive items. 5 golden rings, you know, that's because the dwarves had a lust for power and they lost 2 of them to dragons. Nintendo says that they will buy a topic for Nixolotl. That's very generous, and I would totally allow that. If Nix has a topic handy and Nintendo would like to show Yuletide generosity, I will absolutely allow that. Celtic Druids. Nix, if that's what you want, and Nintendo, if you are so generously going to do so, it is available now that you can redeem Choose Your Own Adventure. Nintendo, that's very generous of you, by the way. Very, very generous. So it is available at the moment if you want to build. There we go, Celtic Druids. That sounds really fun, and I've got a lot to say about that. We'll talk about sacred groves and white horses and all kinds of weird stuff like that. Nintendo, cheers, mate. That's really cool of you. Really cool. All right, so that will be our next viewer request stream. Do we get Celtic knots? I will talk about Celtic knots and labyrinths and the purpose of all of that stuff. Yeah, we'll throw that in there, Nover. All right. With that managed, let us do ourselves a raid. So we're going to go raid a channel that's called Rhinus Leatherworks. I don't know who these people are, but they're funny. She doesn't look Jewish, but they're on the list of people that are also doing our stream charity stuff for Starlight. So we're going to go give them a raid and put some eyeballs on their stuff. And if Nogra says they're cool, that's honestly a really big vote of support. So come back around on Thursday. We will be talking about what's going on in Spain during the 8th century. And there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes down. We're going to lose the Visigoths, and we're going to get the Umayyads, and the Umayyads are going to end up turning into an emirate, and there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff happening, and it's really interesting stuff. And then Charlemagne shows up and kicks everybody's rear end. Interesting topics to cover, but that's for Thursday. Until then, take it easy, have a good time, do something nice for somebody else, and don't tell them about it. That's always the important thing. Don't do it to get recognition. Just do something nice for somebody, and don't tell them about it. And I'll see everybody on Thursday. But until then, let's show some love, yell adventure, throw those adventure hats in, and I'll see you next time. Bye.